Right now, on a luxury liner docked in Grand Cayman, my husband is pale. It is not seasickness. It is the small, blinking red light of a camera held by his own sister. That footage is not just capturing his affair, it is documenting the complete collapse of his entire empire of lies. My 10-year anniversary gift just became his downfall. My name is Olivia Reed, and I am 38 years old. I live my life by a simple code: every detail matters. As a senior architectural curator at Ethelred Designs, I hunt for truth in the lines of a building, in the tension of a cantilevered roof. My world in Chicago is one of logic, precision, and curated beauty. I believed my marriage was the cornerstone of that world. For 10 years, Marcus Thorne had been my perfect counterpart. At 42, he was everything a Chicago financial advisor should be: charismatic, sharp, and devastatingly handsome. Our life was the envy of our circle, a seamless blend of wealth, mutual respect, and what I thought was unshakable love. We were flawless. The cruise was his idea, of course, a surprise for our 10-year anniversary. "Olivia," he said, his voice that perfect smooth baritone that always calmed my nerves. He presented the glossy brochure over dinner at our penthouse. 10 years, an entire decade. I want to celebrate us, properly, the Caribbean, the finest suite. Just you and me for 14 days. We leave next week. I was ecstatic. The last few months at the firm had been grueling, dedicated to securing a retrospective that had consumed my life. The thought of 2 weeks of open water, with the man I trusted above all else, felt like a necessary breath. I kissed him, my heart swelling with a gratitude so profound it almost hurt. This was Marcus, always thoughtful, always one step ahead, always taking care of me. The illusion shattered 3 days before we were set to sail. Marcus came home late, his tie loosened, his usual easy smile replaced by a tight line of stress. This was not the man who charmed boardrooms. This was a man bracing for impact. "Liv, sweetheart, something terrible has happened," he started, rubbing the bridge of his nose. I felt a cold prickle of disappointment before he even said the words. "What is it?" "Marcus. It is this new fund, a crisis. A major client in Singapore is threatening to pull out. We are talking a 9-figure portfolio. I have to fly out tonight. Tonight. I cannot get out of it. My own crisis. The immediate loss of our anniversary, of the sun and the sea, felt petty in comparison. Singapore tonight. For how long? At least a week. I might be able to meet you on the ship for the last few days, but I cannot promise." He took my hands, his own surprisingly cold. "Please, Liv, you have to go. Take a friend. Take your sister." I cannot bear the thought of this gift, of our celebration, going to waste just because of me. His voice was laced with such profound theatrical regret. He looked genuinely crushed. And I, Olivia Reed, the woman who could spot a fraudulent blueprint from 20 paces, bought every word. I melted. "No, of course not. Marcus," I said, stroking his cheek. "It is disappointing, but your career comes first. We always knew that. I will be fine. We will celebrate when you get back." I was logical. I was understanding. I was the perfect, supportive wife. He seemed immensely relieved. He kissed me deeply. "You are incredible. Thank you. I have to pack." I followed him into our walk-in closet, my mind already rearranging my own schedule. While he showered, I pulled his large suitcase from the rack. Singapore. It would be warm. I started laying out his linen suits, his lighter shirts. He had left his briefcase on the ottoman, and as I moved to grab more hangers, I knocked it. It was not latched properly. It fell to the floor, spilling its contents onto the thick wool rug. "Damn it," I muttered, bending to retrieve the scattered papers. Expense reports, a leather notebook, and a slim, unmarked manila folder. I picked up the folder. It felt thin. holding only a few sheets. Curiosity is not usually my vice, but it was the only thing not clearly labeled. I opened it. My blood did not just run cold, it froze solid in my veins. The first page was a booking confirmation for the Odyssey of the Seas, our exact ship, our exact sailing date, but it was not our suite. It was for a separate concierge-level cabin, and the name on the booking was not Marcus Thorne. It was a corporate entity, Phoenix Holdings. My hands began to shake. This made no sense. Why would he book a second secret cabin? I fumbled for the second paper tucked behind it. It was an airline itinerary, a first-class seat, booked in his name. It was not a flight to Singapore. It was a flight to Miami, the departure port for the cruise. It was scheduled to land 4 hours before mine. The silence in the closet was absolute, broken only by the distant hiss of the shower. I stared at the papers, at the name Phoenix Holdings, at the flight itinerary to Miami. The world tilted, for perhaps 15 seconds. I felt nothing at all, just a ringing in my ears. The shock was a physical blow, a sudden, violent vacuum. And then, just as quickly, it was gone. It was replaced by a terrifying, crystalline calm. The grief, the betrayal, the image of Marcus with another woman, all of that was a hot, messy storm somewhere offshore. But in this room, in my mind, there was only ice. I am a curator. I analyze foundations. I find the flaws in the structure. I had just found a fatal one. My hand was perfectly steady. I laid the 2 documents flat on the Persian rug. I pulled my phone from my pocket, my movements economical, precise. I photographed the cruise confirmation, ensuring the cabin number and the corporate name were in sharp focus. I photographed the flight itinerary. I slipped the papers back into the manila folder, placed the folder back in the briefcase exactly as it had been, and latched the clasp. When Marcus emerged from the bathroom, steam rising from his shoulders, I was zipping his suitcase. "All packed," I said, my voice a perfect replica of my usual self. I put in the linen suits and the lighter shirts. Singapore is humid this time of year. He smiled, that broad, dazzling smile that had disarmed me for a decade. "You are a lifesaver. Live. What would I do without you?" "We will just have to find out," I said, handing him his briefcase. At O'Hare, I played the part of the devoted, disappointed wife. I held his hand as we waited in the priority line. I looked suitably crestfallen. He kissed me long and deep just before the security gate. "I will miss you every second," he whispered, his voice thick with false sincerity. "You had better," I replied, forcing a small, sad smile. I watched him walk away. I watched him present his ID. I watched until he blended into the crowd and vanished toward his gate, the one supposedly bound for Asia. I did not move. I waited a full 60 seconds. Then I turned, walked to a quieter corner of the terminal, and dialed a number I rarely used. Isabel Thorne picked up on the 3rd ring. "Olivia, this is a surprise. What, did my idiot brother forget his passport?" Isabel, Marcus's younger sister, was the Thorne family's designated storm. At 35, she was a freelance investigative journalist who lived to expose the kind of men her family revered. She was sharp, cynical, and had a zero-tolerance policy for her brother's polished charm. We were not friends, but we shared a mutual, cautious respect. "I am at O'Hare," I said, my voice low and flat. "I just watched Marcus go through security for his flight to Singapore." "Yeah, the big crisis," she scoffed. "Let me guess. He will be back in a week with a new watch and a story about jet lag." "He is not going to Singapore, Isabel. He is flying to Miami. He has a second cabin booked on our anniversary cruise. It is booked under a shell company." There was a pause. It was not a gasp of shock. It was a silence of profound, terrible satisfaction. "Well," she said, her voice dropping, losing all its previous sarcasm. "I have been waiting for this call for 10 years. Olivia, I just wondered what it would take for you to finally see him for the animal he is. Send me everything you have. Right now. I am sending them. The company is Phoenix Holdings. I am on it. Stay put. Do not go on that cruise. I was not planning on it. I hung up and sent the images. The drive back to our penthouse was automatic. The city lights blurred past the window. The woman who had driven to the airport, the one filled with sad resignation, was gone. The woman driving home was someone new. She was a curator who had just discovered the museum's prized exhibit was a forgery, and she was going to tear it down to the studs. By the time I walked back into our apartment, the silence greeting me. My phone buzzed. A text from Isabel. Phoenix Holdings. Registered in Delaware 3 months ago. No listed assets. No activity. It is a ghost, created for one purpose. What happened 3 months ago? Olivia. I froze, my coat half off. 3 months ago. I remembered. Marcus in my study. A stack of papers. Just restructuring our assets. Live, tax efficiency, sign here, here, and here. It just gives me flexibility. My blood, which I thought had frozen at the airport, turned to liquid nitrogen. This was not just an affair. This was not just a ruined vacation. This was a financial plot, and he was using our anniversary cruise as the stage for it. I didn't sleep. The woman who cried over a missed vacation was a pathetic creature I no longer recognized. The woman who sat in the pre-dawn light of her Chicago penthouse, a secure video call open to Isabel Thorne, was someone else entirely. She was an architect of a different kind, and she was about to design a demolition. "He's in Miami," I said, my voice flat. "He thinks he's invisible. He thinks I'm at home," weeping into my pillow. Isabel's image on the screen was sharp, awake, a predatory glint in her eyes. "He's arrogant, Olivia. He's always been. He's counting on you being the perfect wife. So that's what you're going to be, broken, devastated, but practical. You're going to call him. And say what? You're going to cry. Can you do that?" "I can do anything," I said. I waited until 9 a.m. when I knew he'd be on his way to the port. I practiced the voice in my head a little shaky, thick with unshed tears. I dialed his number. He picked up on the second ring, his voice infuriatingly cheerful. "Liv, sweetheart, I was just thinking about you. How are you holding up?" I let out a small, choked sob. "Marcus, I can't do it." "Can't do what? Baby, what's wrong?" The concern in his voice was so practiced, it made my stomach turn. "I can't go on this cruise," I whispered, letting my voice crack. I tried. I really tried to be strong, but I can't be on that ship, in our suite, without you. It's our anniversary. I'm too sad. There was a beat of silence. He was processing, calculating. "Oh, Liv," he said, his voice softening into a purr of faux sympathy. "I am so sorry. I feel terrible. I've ruined everything." "No, it's not your fault," I said. I called the cruise line. I tried to cancel, to get a refund. They said it's too late, non-refundable. But they said I could do a name change for the primary guest. "A name change?" he asked, his voice suddenly alert. "Yes, so." "I gave our cabin to Isabel." "To Isabel?" He sounded genuinely shocked. "She just finished that long investigation in Detroit. She was so stressed. I couldn't let the suite go to waste. Marcus, she deserves a vacation, and I'm just going to stay here and work. It's fine." The relief that flooded his voice was a tidal wave. It was so obvious, so grotesque. I almost laughed. "Olivia, that is an incredible idea. That is so thoughtful of you. Really, I'm so glad she'll get to use it. It makes me feel so much less guilty. You're the best. You know that." He thought he had won. He thought his plan was now foolproof. His grieving wife was safe at home in Chicago. His firebrand sister was contained in the main suite. where she couldn't possibly cause any trouble, and he and his mistress were free to enjoy their secret cabin, just a few decks away. "I'm glad you approve," I whispered, and hung up. I immediately dialed the cruise line's executive services, a number not available to the general public. "Yes, this is Olivia Reed. I'm the guest who just transferred the royal suite to Ms. Isabel Thorne." "Yes, thank you. I'd like to make an additional change. I see on your deck plan that the adjoining cabin, 10552 the Guardian Suite, is still available. I'd like to book it. For Ms. Thorne, yes. An upgrade." Marcus had booked his secret cabin, 10554, for its privacy. What he didn't know, what only a curator obsessed with blueprints would have noticed, was that the Guardian Suite, 10552, was the only suite on the ship that shared a connecting service balcony with his cabin, a balcony that was technically off-limits to guests, but accessible from both rooms. I put the $10,000 upgrade on my personal card, the one Marcus didn't know I had. 2 hours later, Isabel boarded the Odyssey of the Seas in Miami. She was not dressed for a vacation. She was dressed for work, dragging a Pelican case filled with what she told the staff was vlogging equipment, high-definition cameras, stabilizers, and, most importantly, parabolic microphones. Back in Chicago, I turned my penthouse into a command center. My desk, usually covered in architectural journals, was now covered in 3 laptops. One ran an encrypted, continuous audio link to Isabel. The second was for my own research. The third I used to make my final call. "Good morning. This is Olivia Reed. I need to speak to Mr. Abramson. It's a matter of forensic accounting. I have reason to believe my husband, Marcus Thorne, is liquidating my personal assets through a shell company called Phoenix Holdings. I need you to find every cent." The first 24 hours were a long, controlled breath. The ship was in international waters, a floating kingdom of denial and excess, and I was in my penthouse, watching my own kingdom crumble in real time. My phone buzzed with an encrypted file from Isabel. Confirmation. Her text read, "He is in cabin 10554, and he is not alone. Check your drive." I opened the video file. It was shot from a distance, probably the upper deck, zoomed in on the adults-only solarium. The lens was steady. There was Marcus, my husband, laughing. He was in his favorite blue swim trunks, the ones I had bought him in Greece. He was leaning over a lounge chair, and a woman was reclining on it. She reached up, pulled his face down, and they kissed. It was not a peck. It was a long, slow, proprietary kiss. The camera zoomed in on her face as she smiled up at him. Serafina Hayes. Of course. I recognized her instantly. Serafina, all of 28 years old, the latest it girl in Chicago's interior design scene. She was all sharp angles, blonde ambition, and breathless networking. I had met her at least 3 times at various galas and fundraisers. She was one of those peripheral figures, all air kisses and compliments about my work at Ethelred, while her eyes scanned the room for a more important connection. She had found one. She had found my husband. I watched the video once. I registered the casual intimacy, the way his hand rested on her thigh. I saw the betrayal, and then I closed the file. I did not watch it again. The affair was merely a symptom. The forgery was the disease. The video was evidence, nothing more. I moved it into a secure folder and went back to my financials. Isabel, meanwhile, was proving to be a terrifyingly effective spy. She was a journalist to the bone. I made friends with their cabin steward. She reported to me over our secure line, her voice a low murmur against the faint sound of the ship's engines. "He hates them. They are demanding. They keep asking for office supplies, letterhead, envelopes, a secure international line. And they have made calls." Olivia. Multiple calls, over 20 minutes each, routed through the ship's satellite to the Cayman Islands. My blood ran cold. "They are not on vacation, are they?" "No," Isabel said flatly. "They are at work. They are using this cruise as a floating, untraceable office. They are finalizing something, and they are doing it right next door to me. The proof I needed came the next morning, 48 hours after Marcus had left for Singapore. The call was from Mr. Abramson, my new forensic accountant. His voice was dry, precise, and devoid of emotion, which I appreciated. "Ms. Reed," he began, "we have completed the preliminary trace on Phoenix Holdings. As your sister-in-law suspected, it is a shell, but the money trail leading to it is alarming." "Go on," I said, opening a new document on my laptop. "Over the last 90 days, a significant portion of your personal trust fund has been systematically liquidated, specifically shares from your tech portfolio. The sales were conducted in staggered blocks, likely to avoid flagging the market." "How much?" I asked, my voice steady. "As of this morning, the total comes to just over $3 million. I said nothing. $3 million. My inheritance. The money my grandfather had left me. The money that gave me the freedom to pursue a career in curation instead of a more lucrative path. That $3 million, Abramson continued, was funneled into a temporary holding account in Delaware. From there, it was transferred, in full, to Phoenix Holdings. And from there, it has vanished. The account is empty." "Where did it go?" "Mr. Abramson." "That is the part we are still tracing, but it appears the ultimate destination is a bank in Grand Cayman, which, I see from my notes, is the primary stop on your husband's cruise. He was not just taking a lover on a trip. He was taking my money to a tax haven to wash it clean." "But Mr. Abramson," I said, the final critical piece clicking into place. "How my trust requires my signature for any capital withdrawal, a digital signature I have never given." There was a heavy pause. "That is the most troubling part. Ms. Reed, the liquidations were not unauthorized. According to the bank's records, every single transaction, all $3 million of it, was approved. They have copies of the digital authorization. It was approved using your unique e-signature. After the call with Abramson, the penthouse was no longer a sanctuary. It was a crime scene. $3 million. My signature. He had forged my digital authorization. I stood in the center of our enormous living room, staring at the sterile, perfect lines of the furniture Serafina Hayes had probably helped him pick out, and felt the structure of my life collapse. I was a curator. I date objects. I find provenances. I look for the imperfections that tell the truth. And for 10 years, I had been living in a forgery. The memories came back, not as a gentle wave of nostalgia, but as a flood of toxic evidence. I began my excavation of the past year, and the red flags I had ignored were suddenly blinding. It started nearly 6 months ago. The constant, sudden business trips. "Liv, a client in Zurich is panicking. I have to go. Just for the weekend." "Sweetheart, the London office needs me. 4 days, tops." "This Dubai deal is falling apart. I have to be on a plane tonight." They always happened when I was at my busiest, when Ethelred Designs was launching a new exhibit, when I was buried in catalogs and logistics, when my focus was anywhere but on him. I was the dedicated, logical wife. I understood. His career was demanding. So I packed his bags, I kissed him at the door, and I went back to my work, relieved to have the apartment to myself. Then came the paperwork. It was about 3 months ago, on a Tuesday night. I was exhausted, having just finished an installation. Marcus waited until I had a glass of wine in my hand. He brought a thick leather folder into my study, his expression a perfect mask of professional concern. "Liv, we need to talk about your portfolio," he said, his voice smooth and reassuring. "The tax laws are changing, and your trust is far too exposed. We need to restructure, get you into something more flexible, shield our assets." It sounded so responsible, so protective. He laid out several documents, filled with fine print I was too tired to read. "I know you are swamped, sweetheart," he said, rubbing my shoulders. "You have got the Ethelred Gala, and I have these new clients. I found a way to streamline everything." He pointed to the last page. This is just a limited power of attorney. It allows me to manage the assets flexibly on your behalf. It just means I can make the trades we discussed, quickly, without having to bother you for a signature on every single transaction. It is just for efficiency. Efficiency. My favorite word. He knew me so well. I signed the papers. I handed my husband the digital keys to my inheritance because I was too busy with my career. I thanked him for being so thoughtful. The emotional distance began then, too. He was physically present, but emotionally absent, always on his phone, taking client calls on the balcony, his back to me. But he covered his tracks with gifts. He became incredibly, obscenely generous. When I mentioned feeling lonely, a diamond bracelet appeared on my pillow. When I complained that we never spent time together, a brand new silver sports car was waiting in our garage, a ridiculous red bow on the hood. For my brilliant, hard-working wife, the card read. I realized now he was not giving me gifts. He was paying me off. He was laundering his guilt. He was distracting the curator by flooding the gallery with shiny, worthless objects, and I had mistaken the bribery for devotion. The final, sickening memory clicked into place. The one that made me realize this was not just Marcus. Christmas. Less than a year ago. Our penthouse, filled with the entire Thorne family. Marcus's father, Arthur Thorne, sat at the head of our table. The Honorable Judge Arthur Thorne, retired, a man whose reputation for integrity was carved in granite. He was the family patriarch, the moral compass, and he had always treated me with a warmth that felt more paternal than my own father's. He raised his glass of scotch in a toast. "To Olivia," he boomed, his judicial voice silencing the room. The only person in the world smart enough to manage the Historical Society and foolish enough to manage our Marcus. The table laughed. I laughed. Later that evening, I was standing with Arthur by the fireplace. He put a hand on my arm, his eyes twinkling. He nodded toward Marcus, who was holding court by the bar, charming a group of investors. "You trust that boy Marcus too much, Olivia," Arthur said, his tone light, almost joking. "He is a good man, Arthur. He is your son," I replied, smiling. Arthur looked at me, his smile fixed, but his eyes were cold. A word of advice from an old man. In finance, my dear, trust is a liability. It is just an asset that appears on someone else's balance sheet. I had dismissed it as the cynical humor of a man who had seen too much in court. I sat there, in the dark of my multi-million-dollar apartment, the city lights blurring. It was not a warning. It was not a joke. It was a confession. He knew. He knew exactly what his son was. He might have even been the architect. My realization that Arthur was involved was a sickening hypothesis. Isabel provided the proof. The shared service balcony was a masterstroke. It was a narrow, exposed strip of metal 5 feet wide, shielded from the decks below, but completely open between the two suites. Isabel, dressed in black, was crouched against the bulkhead, her parabolic microphone aimed at the sliver of open air near Marcus's balcony door. "He's been on the phone for 20 minutes, she whispered into her own comms, the feed piping directly into my noise-canceling headphones in Chicago. "His voice is different, not the one you know. This is the real him." I listened. The faint roar of the ocean was a backdrop to my husband's voice, stripped of all its charm. It was cold, arrogant, and clipped. "Of course it's handled," Marcus snapped, his voice clear as a bell. "She doesn't suspect a thing. She's at home in Chicago, probably organizing a gala or something. She's too busy with her old buildings and her dead architects to ever look at a bank statement. By the time she even realizes it's gone, the money will be clean in Cayman. She's predictable." Predictable. The word was a slap. He was mocking my career. The very thing he always claimed to admire. The thing he used as a smokescreen for his own crimes. "No, I told you. The transfer is the easy part. The structuring on this end is what matters." He paused. "Hold on, he's here." I heard the sound of the cabin door sliding open and closing. "It's done," Marcus said, his tone shifting, becoming more deferential. And then a new voice spoke. It was not Seraphina's light, breathy tone. This voice was deep, resonant, and coated in authority. It was a voice I knew from a decade of holiday dinners and family toasts. Being done is not the same as being correct. "Marcus," the voice said. My heart stopped. It was not possible. "Isabel," I whispered into my own microphone. "Who is that? Who is in that room?" "I can't see," she whispered back. "He's inside the cabin, away from the door. Seraphina's in the bedroom. This is someone else. Stay quiet." Isabel shifted. I heard a metallic scrape. "What are you doing?" I hissed. The gap between the privacy divider and the rail. I have about a 2-inch sightline if I press against the glass. I'm moving the camera. It was an insane risk. If they stepped onto the balcony, they would see her. But Isabel was her father's daughter in one way. She was fearless. I heard her sharp, sudden intake of breath over the mic. "Isabel, what is it? Who is it?" She did not answer. Instead, a second later, a new video file began uploading to our secure drive. It was shaky. The lens focused through the narrow gap, panning across the cabin's opulent sitting area. There was Marcus, looking stressed, holding a glass of scotch. There was Seraphina, who had just emerged from the bedroom in a silk robe, looking annoyed. And sitting in the armchair, briefcase open on the table in front of him, was the Honorable Judge Arthur Thorne, my father-in-law. He was not just a guest. He was not there for a surprise visit. He was conducting a meeting. "You used the Phoenix holding for the initial transfer, which was sloppy," Arthur was saying, his voice a cold lecture. He was pointing at a stack of papers. "That connects directly to the Delaware account, which is still too close to her trust. You are leaving a trail. Boy." "I used the power of attorney she signed," Marcus argued. "The power of attorney." Arthur scoffed. "That will be the first thing her lawyers attack. No. The money from Phoenix must be transferred again. Tonight, to the secondary entity in Panama. From there, and only from there, does it move to the Cayman Fund. We are not just hiding it. Marcus, we are making it disappear. This is how it's done." He was not just advising, he was instructing. He was the chief architect. My $3 million. This was not a husband's betrayal. This was a family conspiracy. Arthur's toast at Christmas, his cynical joke about trust, it was the pride of a master criminal boasting to his victim's face. Marcus was just his errand boy. And Seraphina, she was just the cover story, the loud, obvious, blonde distraction. They wanted me to focus on the affair. They wanted me to think this was about sex. They were counting on me being the scorned, emotional, predictable wife. They had no idea who they were dealing with. The video of Arthur Thorne was a declaration of war. I stared at the frozen image of my father-in-law, the man of unimpeachable integrity, as he masterminded the theft of my inheritance. The feed from Isabel's microphone was silent. The meeting was over. "He's a retired federal judge, Olivia." Isabel's voice crackled over our secure line. She was back in her own suite, the adrenaline ebbing from her voice, replaced by a cold, hard assessment. "That video is damning, but it's not enough. He'll bury us. He will claim it was a hypothetical discussion about asset protection. He'll say Marcus was panicking and he was talking him down. His reputation against our word. We lose. We need something physical. We need something undeniable that ties him to the act of the crime." "The ship docks in Grand Cayman tomorrow morning," I said, my mind racing. "That's when they plan to make the final transfers. That's when the money disappears for good. We have less than 12 hours. Isabel." "I know," she said. "I need to get back into that cabin. I need to plant a recorder, a proper one, and I need to see what's in that briefcase Arthur left on the table." "How it's locked. Marcus and Seraphina are in there." "They won't be," Isabel said, a new, dangerous edge to her voice. "It's the captain's gala tonight. Everyone will be there. And I know my brother. He is vain. He won't be able to resist showing off his new girlfriend. The plan was audacious. It was pure Isabel. That night, the ship's main ballroom was a sea of tuxedos and gowns. Isabel, looking stunning in a silver dress, had her vlogging camera, making her presence seem perfectly normal. She located Marcus and Serafina near the champagne tower. Marcus was in a cream-colored dinner jacket, Serafina dripping with jewels I now suspected I had paid for. Isabel started filming, walking toward them backward, as if capturing the room. "Oh, this is just perfect," she narrated to her camera. Then, with a practiced journalistic clumsiness, she tripped over another guest's foot and stumbled directly into Marcus. A full glass of dark, rich Cabernet Sauvignon arched through the air, splashing in a perfect, ruinous wave all over the front of his cream jacket. "Marcus!" she shrieked, dropping the camera to her side. "Oh my God, I am so sorry, I am so clumsy." Marcus looked down at the spreading stain with pure, unadulterated fury. "Isabel, you idiot. This is bespoke. I'm so sorry." She stammered, dabbing at it with a napkin, only making it worse. Serafina looked at him in disgust. "You can't stay like that. Go and change. Now." Fuming, Marcus shoved his glass onto a tray and stormed out of the ballroom, heading for the elevators. This was the window. Isabel had already secured a duplicate keycard to cabin 10554 from their steward, a man who was more than happy to help for a consulting fee of $500. She gave Marcus a 2-minute head start. Then she followed, my heart in my throat, listening to the open feed from her phone. I heard the electronic chime as she swiped the card, the click of the door, the silence of the cabin, and then the sound I was praying for, the hiss of the shower from the master bathroom. Marcus was trying to wash off the wine. "I'm in," she whispered, her voice barely audible. She moved fast. I heard her fumbling under the desk, the one where Arthur had been sitting. "The bug is planted, under the lip. He'll never see it." "Get out, Isabel," I whispered to my laptop. "Not yet. The briefcase. It's still here. On the chair. And Olivia. It's not latched." My blood ran cold. "Izzy, don't. It's too risky." "He's running a Ponzi scheme," she whispered. I heard the click of the brass latches. "What? How do you know?" Because I'm looking at your file. Read Olivia Phoenix transfer. It's right on top, and underneath it. Oh, God. There are 3 others. 3 other identical manila folders. She was breathing fast. Harrison, Mark, Wentworth, Anna, Sullivan, James. They all have the same documents. Power of attorney papers, liquidation schedules, transfer notes to the same Panama and Cayman accounts. It was not just my $3 million. It was a scheme, a small, elite, and utterly ruthless operation run by a judge and his son. "Get pictures," I said, my voice hardening. "Get pictures of all of it, now." I heard the snap of her phone's camera, muffled by her hand. Click, click, click. I have them. I have the names. I have the account. The sound of the shower stopped, a beat of pure, agonizing silence. "Izzy," I said, my voice sharp. "Leave, now, leave it." I heard her shove the files back in, the snap of the briefcase, the faint sound of her footsteps on the carpet, the click of the cabin door opening, and the softer click as it shut behind her. She was in the hallway. 5 seconds later, I heard the cabin door open again on her audio feed. I heard Marcus's voice, annoyed, call out into the empty corridor. "Serafina, is that you?" He saw nothing. Isabel was already halfway to the stairwell, holding in her hand the evidence that would not just end my marriage, but would destroy the entire Thorne dynasty. Marcus thought I was predictable. He thought I was the curator, the logical, meticulous wife who was too absorbed in the past to see the present. He thought I was in Chicago, sitting in our silent penthouse, mourning a vacation. He was wrong. While Isabel was planting a microphone in his cabin, I was not staring at the Chicago skyline. I was in the air. I had chartered a private Gulfstream jet, flying through the dark, cutting across 3 time zones. I landed at Owen Roberts International Airport in Grand Cayman just as the sun began to warm the tarmac. The Odyssey of the Seas was a glittering behemoth gliding into the harbor. I was not just a curator. I was an architect of retribution, and I was on site for the demolition. My new command center was a private villa overlooking the port, secured by my legal team. The evidence was already compiled. Abramson's forensic report on the $3 million theft, the forged digital signature, the audio of Arthur Thorne meticulously planning the money laundering, and Isabel's photographs of the Ponzi scheme files. I had spent the entire flight on a secure satellite phone with my lawyers, who then conferenced in the U.S. Department of Justice. I was connected to an assistant director in the white-collar crime division. His voice was calm, professional, but deeply cautious. "Ms. Reed, the evidence of digital forgery is a lock," he had explained. "We can freeze Marcus Thorne's assets and arrest him the second he steps on U.S. soil. But Arthur Thorne, that's a different animal. A retired federal judge with that level of influence. He will claim the audio is advice, not conspiracy. He will tear our case apart on intent. He is on that ship, in your jurisdiction, about to complete the wire transfers," I said, my voice cold. "I can have 2 agents at the port, ready to board." The director conceded. "But they cannot, I repeat, cannot move on a man like Arthur without an undeniable active confession. If we move and we miss, he will bury us all. You need to get him to talk. Can your asset on the ship do that?" "She can," I replied, watching 2 men in sharp suits pull up to my villa. "She's waiting for my signal." The ship docked at 9 a.m. The passengers, giddy with vacation energy, began to disembark. But in cabin 10554 there was no vacation. There was only work. Through the bug Isabel had planted, I heard the clink of coffee cups, the rustle of papers, and the tapping of a keyboard. They were preparing to make my money disappear forever. I looked at the 2 federal agents who now stood beside me, an earpiece connecting them to my feed. "It's time," I said. "Isabel, execute." From her suite, Isabel dialed Marcus's number. I heard her, a perfect performance of manufactured panic, and an instant later, I heard it again as it rang in Marcus's cabin. "Marcus!" she shrieked, her voice cracking. "Oh my God, Marcus, you have to help me." "Isabel, what the hell is wrong with you?" I heard Marcus snap. "I am in the middle of something." She's here, I swear to God. "Marcus, I just saw her. Olivia. She's in the main lobby. She's talking to guest services." A cup slammed onto a saucer. "What did you say?" "Olivia. She flew here. I think she came to surprise you." "Oh my God, Marcus, what do I do? What do I say?" "You say nothing," he hissed. "You go back to your room and you lock the door. Do not talk to her. Do not look at her. Just stay put." He hung up. "She's here," I heard him whisper. "She's here. She can't be here. She's supposed to be in Chicago." "How?" "Calm down, boy." Arthur's voice boomed, irritated. "So she's here. She's a sentimental fool. She missed her husband. It's a coincidence. It changes nothing, as long as you keep your head. A coincidence. She's here. Serafina's here. What if she sees her? What if?" I heard him dialing again. "Serafina, it's me. Lock your door. Do not leave the bedroom. Do not open it for anyone but me. Do you understand?" A muffled, terrified yes. "Father, we have to move the money. Now," Marcus said, his voice high with panic. "Before she finds this cabin." "You are panicking," Arthur growled. "You are acting guilty. Stop." This was the moment. "Isabel," I said into my comms. "The final push. Now." A second later, a frantic pounding echoed through the bug. rattling the door of cabin 10-554. "Marcus, father, let me in! Please!" Isabel screamed. I heard the deadbolt slide. The door flew open. Isabel stumbled in, hyperventilating, tears streaming down her face. "She's not alone," she cried. "What are you talking about?" Arthur demanded, his voice finally losing its judicial calm. "Olivia. She's not here for a surprise. She knows everything." "She knows what?" Marcus's voice was a terrified whisper. "I saw her at the elevator," Isabel wailed, backing against the wall. "She's with 2 men, big men. They looked like security, but they weren't wearing uniforms. They're coming up. She was pointing. She knows you're in this room. She said he's in there. Oh God, Father, she knows. She knows everything." The trap was set. The bait was taken. In my villa, the agents and I leaned in, listening to the silence, waiting for the confession. The silence in the cabin, piped from the bug to my villa, was electric. It was the silence of 2 masterminds realizing their fortress was under siege. Isabel's performance was flawless. She had given them a threat Olivia plus security and a ticking clock. They had to react. Arthur Thorne, the brilliant former judge, was the first to break. But he did not break with fear. He broke with rage. You incompetent idiot," he roared, and I heard the sound of a hand striking a table. He was not talking to Isabel. He was talking to his son. "She's here with security. You were supposed to be invisible. You were supposed to be in Singapore." "How did I know she would fly to Cayman?" Marcus shrieked back, his voice cracking with pure terror. "She's supposed to be in Chicago. Father, they're coming. They're coming right now." "Then you will stand by the door," Arthur commanded, his voice dropping into a lethal, controlled growl. This was the man who ran a courtroom. This was the man who ran a Ponzi scheme. "You will not panic. You will listen to me. When she gets here with her security, who are probably just 2 overweight ship's marshals, you will act surprised. Delighted, even. Delighted she knows. Father, she knows nothing," Arthur bellowed. "She has no proof of anything. She is an emotional, sentimental woman. You will tell her you were here with a client. That girl in the bedroom, Serafina, she's a high-priority client. You're advising her on an offshore acquisition." "But what about the money?" Marcus stammered, his panic so thick he was almost incoherent. "What about the $3 million she'll have seen the transfer? She'll ask where it is. And you will tell her it was a misunderstanding," Arthur shot back. "You will tell her you were restructuring the assets, just as you discussed, and the power of attorney she signed gave you full authority. You will tell her you were protecting her. She has no proof. Marcus, no proof that we intended to take it. Intent, that is the only thing that matters, and she cannot prove it. But the transfer to Panama, the Cayman accounts? I will handle that," Arthur said, his voice ablade. "I will explain that the initial transfer was an error by my office, a clerical mix-up. I will fall on the sword for a misdemeanor to protect us from the felony. I will just..." It was the confession. It was everything the agents beside me needed. Intent. The transfer to Panama. The Cayman accounts. Protect us from the felony. And then, the moment the entire operation had been built for, Isabel, who had been crying in the corner, a portrait of the terrified younger sister, let out one last shuddering sob. "Isabel, shut up." Marcus screamed at her. "No, Marcus," she said. Her voice was no longer crying. It was cold. It was calm. It was the voice of a journalist who had her story. She had slowly, almost imperceptibly, raised her phone, which had been clutched in her hand, screen down. Now. She held it up, the lens pointed directly at her father and brother. Through the bug, I heard Arthur stop mid-sentence. I heard Marcus's breathing hitch. He was the first to see it. He was staring at his sister, at her steady hand, and at the small, blinking, beautiful red light in the corner of her phone's screen. "Isabel," Marcus stammered. His voice was a whisper. "What? What are you doing?" He looked from the phone to her face. He saw the tears were gone. He saw the cold, hard triumph in her eyes. He looked at the door, then back at her, and in that instant, he understood. There was no one coming. Olivia was not in the hall. There was no security. The trap was not outside the door. It had been inside the room with them the entire time. This was the moment of the title. This was the second his world evaporated. He paled. It was not a figure of speech. Every ounce of blood, arrogance, and color drained from his face, leaving a waxy gray mask of pure horror. "You," he whispered, pointing a trembling finger. You've been filming." Arthur Thorne, realizing the betrayal a split second later, let out a wordless roar. He was a bull. He lunged across the cabin, his arm outstretched, not at his son, but at his daughter, his hand a claw aiming for the phone. "You little bitch," he screamed. But Isabel was a journalist. She knew how to protect a source. She spun away, holding the phone aloft, and scrambled backward toward the balcony door. "That's right, Father," Isabel said, her voice cutting through the stunned silence. She did not even look at the phone in her hand. Instead, she nodded toward the desk, where a slim laptop sat open, its own webcam light glowing, and it's been streaming live, directly to Olivia and her new friends. As if summoned by her words, the adjoining balcony door slid open with a heavy, smooth thud. I did not step out. I made an entrance. The woman Marcus expected, the weeping, heartbroken curator, did not exist. I had left her in Chicago. The woman who stood there now wore a razor-sharp cream-colored pantsuit. My hair was pulled back. My eyes were ice. I was not alone. Flanking me were the 2 federal agents from the villa, and beside them, the ship's formidable head of security. The cabin, which had felt like a fortress to them, suddenly became a cage. Arthur Thorne froze, his hand still outstretched. He looked from me to the agents and back, his brilliant legal mind finally understanding that he had not just been outmaneuvered, he had been publicly executed. Marcus simply collapsed. He fell backward onto a plush ottoman, his face a mask of utter ruin. "Olivia," he breathed. "Olivia, I can—" "Shut up, Marcus," I said. My voice was quiet, devoid of all emotion. It was not a request. It was a curatorial note, dismissing a forgery. "You took my trust, you took my anniversary, you took my signature, and you took $3 million, and you thought I would sit at home and just— What weep reorganize the archives?" I looked past him, my gaze landing on Arthur Thorne, the patriarch, the judge. "That joke you made at Christmas. Arthur," I said, taking a slow step into the room, "about trust being a liability. I remember it. Now I finally understand. It was not a warning. It was your business model." Before he could answer, the bedroom door flew open. Serafina Hayes burst out, wrapped in a silk robe, her face a mess of terror and confusion. She saw Marcus, then me, then the uniformed security chief and the 2 men in dark suits with federal badges clipped to their belts. Her survival instincts, the same ones that drew her to my husband, kicked in. She pointed a trembling finger at Marcus. "I knew nothing!" she screamed, a high, piercing wail. "I swear to God, I knew nothing about any of this. He lied to me. He told me his wife was dead. He told me she was dead." It was the most pathetic and perhaps most honest thing I had heard all day. One of the agents ignored her completely and stepped toward the 2 men. "Arthur Thorne, Marcus Thorne, you are both under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud, money laundering, and securities fraud." The sound of handcuffs ratcheting shut was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. Arthur was rigid, his face purple with a rage so profound it left him silent. But Marcus, my husband, just stared at me, his eyes pleading, still trying to find the woman he thought he knew. It was Isabel, he whispered, a final, desperate attempt to deflect. She set us up. That video. I smiled. It was the first time I had smiled in a week. Oh, Marcus, I said. I pointed to his sister, who was now calmly powering down her laptop. You still do not get it, do you? You are so focused on the video. I walked over to the desk. She did not just film you. She backed up your entire hard drive last night, the entire Ponzi scheme, the Harrison file, the Wentworth file, the Sullivan file. She copied everything while you were busy in the shower, washing red wine off that ridiculous jacket. His face went from gray to white. He finally understood. The affair was the distraction. The video was the confirmation. The hard drive was the coffin. The agents pulled both men, cuffed, toward the door. The play was over. I walked past Marcus. On the table beside him was an untouched glass of champagne, no doubt poured to celebrate the final transfer. I picked it up. I walked past the federal agents, past my weeping, desperate father-in-law, and stepped out onto the balcony. The warm, bright air of Grand Cayman hit my face. I looked out at the turquoise water, so clear and clean. I raised the glass, took a slow, deliberate sip, and listened to the sound of the cabin door clicking shut behind them. Thank you so much for listening to our story. Where in the world are you tuning in from? Let us know in the comments. We would love to connect and hear your thoughts. Please subscribe to Lily Revenge Stories, give this video a like, and if you want to support us, hit that hype button so more people can hear this story.